I'm so excited to have you here, Evelyn. You have no idea, to have you here on the day that Pluto enters into Aquarius.
I know. Wow.
Very exciting. So
Here we are. It is the day. And yeah, how are you feeling with it? It's been a long time coming. And I know we've been
yeah.
anticipating it for a little while, but have you noticed anything for yourself?
I think there's been a lot of fear leading up to what this experience was going to be. And for me, just almost noticing this interesting attention that it was receiving, that, when Pluto entered Capricorn back in 2008, people were not focused on it. It wasn't this big focus. And so now everybody's talking about this, and it's almost like mainstream, if you will, a little bit. And so there's this what's going to happen feeling, like, oh my gosh, is something going to happen? And Pluto is such a it's such a it has such a dark connotation that it carries with it. And going into Aquarius, yeah, it sounds like it's going into the collective and what's going to happen when death and transformation comes to the collective. So yeah, that's kind of how I'm just feeling, but I haven't had any changes, if you will, that I've noticed in my day to day.
I've been noticing a little bit for myself, like, because for me, I'll get thoughts and ideas, or I'll sort of take on the mood of how things are feeling collectively. And I feel like for me, and maybe for a lot of people, there's a feeling of wanting to disconnect from the collective,
Right.
or not be so influenced as much in terms of beliefs and like ideologies around what like a collective mentality is believing.
Right.
I feel like a desire to pull away, or like a kind of becoming a bit more insular, or maybe going into the more secret, like keeping things more secret or private.
Yes. Like you mean disconnecting from
Yeah, yeah.
people and situations, right?
Yeah, or not having such a personal responsibility, I suppose, to the collective, in terms of like grandiose kind of big shows of beliefs around what the collective should and shouldn't be doing, but more of like, well, I'm just going to focus on my own relationship to the collective by myself, on my own, and then like think
Right.
through this privately.
Right. And that goes into the idea that Pluto, it represents secret societies and this occultism, and how back when Pluto went into Aquarius last time, a lot of that was going on. There's these secret, meetings and groups, and that stuff was kind of happening. So it's almost, for me, the idea of it for the next 20 years is it's going to shed light on that, and it's going to start to almost open it up in a way where things that have remained hidden, or groups that have remained hidden, are now going to start to come a little bit more to the light, where people are going to see it. But I could be wrong on that. That's just my own interpretation of how I'm feeling moving into this time period. So can you help actually shed some light on how this is playing into, we don't even need to go into the whole 20-year aspect, but the month, this whole month overview of the theme?
Well, it is self and other oriented. Aries season is always about the self, identifying your own personal individual self and traits and ideologies outside of the collective other, and sparking and initiating that inspiration for what your own individual mission is in life. But also while cultivating the ability to connect with others, build alliances, being very particular about what those alliances are, and starting to make steps towards building a broader vision of what the future holds. So in the Aries season, as the sun moves through Aries season, we're going to have themes of the 2, 3, and 4 of wands, which in the tarot is setting up a goal, coming into an inspired theme, and then creating a vision for yourself for what you want to accomplish. And so it is the kind of, rebirth, reawakening, renewal time of year, and being able to kind of have the long range picture of what we want to accomplish for ourselves. So it's an inspiring time for sure. And with Pluto coming into Aquarius, I mean, that's just going to definitely bring up the topic of our personal relationship to the collective even more, of like, well, is this really what I want to work towards? Is this something that I'm passionate about? Is the collective moving in a direction that I want to be a part of? And if not, what can I do on an individual level to either influence that or maintain my sovereignty through that experience?
So would you say that just in general, that people might be feeling the desire to break off and kind of go their own isolated directions, but would it be wise to do so? Or would it be more with the idea, well, actually finding or being, supportive of others and kind of coming together in ways where, because we're going to need each other over the course of this time, right?
Yeah. Well, with the Pluto transit, you know how there's the initial shock of the thing, the initial immediate realization. And then with that realization, there's usually a polar expression from that. Like, and then throughout the time of Pluto and Aquarius, we kind of go back and forth in these like rapid polar expressions until we find a middle ground. So I think first off, it'll be a criticism or a critique on the collective and the direction it's going in, and whether or not individually we want to participate in that. And then as time goes on, because Pluto will be in Aquarius for like almost 2 decades, we're going to find our way in that. We're going to find our inspiration. One great example is AI, for instance. How AI functions is it pulls all of the information that all humans have ever done on the internet, and it's reflecting back to us ourselves. It's reflecting back to us our consciousness. And so throughout Pluto and Aquarius, I think the realization that what we do online and how we participate on the internet with each other is essentially affecting our collective in a much deeper, impactful way. So I think throughout that whole process of the next 20 years is going to be like the rejection of, and then the realization of, and then the empowerment of, and then the desire to change.
Right. That's so interesting. Yeah. And when you mention the AI element, it's something that most of us either love or we fear, right? It's like there's there's a polarizing element to that idea of AI, because there's this fear that it could take over, and what happens with that type of takeover, and then and then other people who are like, no, let's embrace this, let's use this, we can further our human expression and deepen our understanding of our own selves through AI. so it's going to be very interesting on just seeing almost how humanity evolves over the next 20 years. And I have to say that with that, knowing that Aquarius is ruled by Uranus, and Uranus being in Taurus, there's that idea for me too that this is changing things here on Earth. There's something that feels, like big that could be really kind of happening here.
Mhm.
And are you picking up on that energy at all?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Like, for instance, our cell phones, I'm convinced, are making us more telepathic.
Really? Oh, tell
They're
me how you tell me that. Tell me about this.
okay, so this is going to be based off of something I read like years ago that it just stuck with me, and I decided to be true for myself. But
Get
it's
it.
true. So there's an element in our phones that our phones are made with, which is, gosh, is it radium? There's some element in our phones that have now been scientifically proven can send information
Okay.
and memories, like jump quantum fields. And I think because we've had these devices on us with around our physical bodies, around our ethereal and psychic bodies are like adapting to the elements that exist in the phone. Like there's gold in here, there's copper, there's radium, there's all different elemental physical material things
Right.
that are working to telepathically communicate information. And so I feel as though our consciousness is sort of adopting or adapting to what these elements are able to do for us.
Okay. That makes, that would explain why when I have these thoughts or visions about somebody, they will message me.
All the time, right?
Yes. Yes. Because I just thought I was becoming more psychic. I was like, oh my gosh, I must be having like this awakening happening. Because I will
Well,
think about things, and then that person will reach out about that very thing.
on your phone, right?
Yes.
Exactly. It's
Yes.
sending that message telepathically. And I think we are getting more psychic because of it.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, there's a theory back in the day with the Egyptians, or even before that time, where that's how people communicated, right? It was through
mhm,
telepathy, and that, perhaps they were communicating interdimensionally, or on other universes as well. So
mm,
I very love that idea. I think that would be, it's almost like we went backwards instead of kind of evolving even more forwards. If that was going on back then, and
mm.
we're just starting to understand that that's how we're supposed to communicate.
Right. Yeah. And all the huge resurgence of use of crystals and, Taurus, which is the material world, connecting with the energetic properties of the earth, connecting with, ley lines, even
Right.
the energetic points in the earth, and people becoming more conscious around those points. Like Uranus and Taurus, I remember writing about it. I was like, there's going to be like huge pilgrimages happening with this, because
Right.
huge waves of people are going to be attracted to different parts of the earth energetically, and
Oh
just
my
feel
gosh.
like a
Yeah.
calling. And then 2020, it just boomerang, like it just exploded, and everyone was like, you know what? I feel called to the desert, or I feel like moving here, or that was the big that was a big theme for
Yeah.
clients in 2020 for me.
That's so interesting you say that, because it was a change in the frequency of the earth, right? So it's almost like, oh my gosh, I cannot be here anymore, whether that was the way that the city was being run, or it's almost like um And for me, I was feeling that same way, where it was like, I literally can't function in this city anymore. My body needs to be in a very harmonious environment. And so how can I get out? So that's really interesting you mentioned that.
Yeah, same here.
And I had another question. I know we just had the new moon in Aries on Tuesday. What would you say we should be focusing on for that new moon cycle?
The new moon cycle in Aries is again always about the rebirth of the self and the reconnecting with what sparks your inspiration to live, really. It's what drives you and what motivates you in life. So reconnecting with those parts of yours, like your goal in life, like what's your true passion in this life, and is that in alliance with what your actions are in your everyday life, and how can you bring your spiritual, emotional, and physical goals in alignment together as one to work as a unit, as a solid, unified force. So that's how I see the new moon in Aries, and it's like a spark of excitement. It's a spark of energy, and I always love Aries. I'm a Libra, so I love Aries season because this is always when things start moving, things start taking shape, people start making moves for their future, and things just start to pick up around this time.
Yeah, I think it's funny because in the old, calendar system, this would be like the new year, right? It's almost the new start, the new beginning.
Exactly. This is our new year.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's funny that we start the calendar kind of in the middle of winter, and then come spring, that's really when people want to start getting moving and getting out there and doing things.
Yeah, definitely. I feel that too. If we had our way, I suppose astrologically we would definitely be in our new year.
Right. When is the next full moon, and is the next full moon, this is another thing, is it an eclipse?
The full moon is a little off of being an eclipse for April 5th. The eclipse, the solar eclipse, is on April 19th, which is another new moon in Aries, which is what's really fascinating about this cycle, is that we had the new moon Aries 0 degrees, and then we're going to have the eclipse at 29 degrees. So the last degree of Aries on April 19th. Yeah, at 9:12 p.m. So that new moon is going to be really influential in showing us themes that we're going to be working with throughout the year. Because the nodal axis is going to shift in July, and then in fall we're going to have our eclipse cycle in Aries and Libra. So this season is really big for us to see what themes we're going to be working through for the next year or so, and then back into the next eclipse or nodal cycles. So that total solar eclipse in Aries on April 19th is one to definitely journal about.
Okay.
For sure. And then the full moon is on April 5th at 9:34 p.m. at 16 degrees Libra. And that one features a conjunction with Chiron. So this one is going to be a very healing full moon for us. As I was mentioning, that realization of the individual self and our own personal motivations and goals that we're here to do, the full moon is going to help us to heal any gaps between our relationships for our goals and for how we access or acquire those goals. It's going to help to also bridge gaps within our relationships, period, in general, helping us to understand how we need to communicate either more effectively or more more effectively, I suppose. Aries is a very effective and like kind of efficient sign. So how you can communicate more efficiently and more directly in order to create more balance within your personal relationships.
I love that. I didn't know it was going to be. So the sun will be conjunct Chiron on that one. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So Chiron and Aries, which has been in there for a few years, and it's been working on, which not ironically, but of course, during the pandemic, we all were experiencing Chiron and Aries very deeply in our own ways, which brings up the topics of self-isolation, loneliness, independence, how we are moving into the future courageously while navigating those really deep inner experiences of loneliness.
Yeah.
So the full moon is going to be really a beautiful healing opportunity to address any of those latent feelings of isolation, and then understand how we can open up to connect with others more effectively.
Okay. That's that. So it's highly focused on relationships. I wasn't even aware of that. So that's really interesting. And when I think of Aries, I don't ever think about isolation, but because it would be opposite Libra, that would actually make a lot of sense, because it's the single, it's the one. And then when you go into the Libra, it's the partnership. So it makes sense.
Yeah, and the moon being the emotional connection, being in the other, like how can you get out of yourself, or how can you get out of your own way to open up and connect more vulnerably emotionally with other people, or just, and not even, saying that there's anyone that has to do that, but, just awareness is around maybe small behaviors and, the way we speak or what we say that can potentially isolate us more will be illuminated during that full moon.
Okay. That's good. That's a good note to focus on. I like that.
And some people might want more isolation and be like, you know what? I'm going to figure out how I can just be more in myself and away from others. And that's also part of it too. For other people, it goes both ways.
Right. Well, I think there's a heavy focus on relationships over the past few years, where and partnerships, how are we partnering in ways with people who can be supportive? It's as a Libra myself, I know that I have been more in that Aries mindset of, no, I can do this on my own. I'm super independent. I'm almost too independent, that when the shit actually hits the fan, I am like, oh my gosh, I'm sick. I'm not feeling well. I don't think I can do this, all alone anymore. And then starting to have that realization that my relationships that are around me are the most important. So needing to really start nurturing and almost appreciating those relationships more than I had in the past.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really beautiful. That's, the beauty of that full moon is like balancing our need to be validated by others,
Right.
and recognized and acknowledged as well, but then knowing how to do that in a way that is heart opening. Yeah.
Yes.
And not like continuing to isolate. Yeah.
Right. Okay. I love that. Are there any more standout dates people should be looking out for? I know we have a lot of planetary shifts happening. Can you share some of those dates with us?
Sure. There's quite a bit. Well, on April 3rd, Mercury enters Taurus. So that's Mercury's ingress into Taurus out of Aries. And when that happens, we're probably going to start to feel a bit of a slowdown in our communication. We're going to feel a bit more, it might take even a little longer to understand things as well, or even want to start understanding things. When any planet is in Taurus, it helps us to be more in the moment. Because Aries is so future oriented or so focused on the future that when Taurus comes along, it's like immediate stop, pause, be here right now, not focus on the future so much. Let's not rush through anything. So Mercury, the planet of the mind and movement and communication, kind of pulls us into wanting to enjoy the momentary experiences, more experiential understanding, allowing us to have a moment to breathe and settle into our brain spaces, and having more of a tactile, physical experience with what we're understanding. So we might also just need to explore, what else is Taurus associated with in April is beauty that starts blooming around us, flowers, the earth, reconnecting with the earth, wanting to maybe not be in a hustle bustle as much, but going out in nature and reconnecting our mental energies and brain waves with the frequency of slowness and stillness. So it's a great time for meditation as well.
That's it. Yeah, that's what when you're saying that, I'm like, that's like the perfect time to be out there doing an outdoor grounding exercise or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. Working with your hands to beginning creative, making things beautiful. So also tidying up your spaces, bringing in more flowers, all those winter projects that we want to do that we are like, oh, we'll just do it at another time. This is also the time to start taking out those projects, like crafts projects and crafts that we've always been wanting to do, and just put pen to paper or use our hands, sewing, for instance, or working with clay, the earth. Yeah.
Okay, that's perfect. And what date is that happening on again?
April 3rd.
April 3rd. Okay, so it's coming up here.
Yeah. And then on April 10th, so these are all the ingresses that I'm going to go through really quickly. So we have April 10th, Venus ingresses into Gemini. So that sends us off into a whirlwind of networking opportunities and connecting with people within our communities. We might meet a lot of new people that we haven't yet, but have always been around us. It's a great time to get out into the town and just network and meet people. On April 20th, the sun ingresses into Taurus. So that solidifies our spring season up here in the Northern Hemisphere. And this is when all the beauty just starts bursting forth on the earth. And we're in that Venusian sensual season of Taurus. The day after, Mercury stations retrograde in Taurus. So luckily, this is after tax season. Oh,
I didn't even think about that. That's a good note.
Yeah. Luckily, after taxes, then Mercury will go retrograde. But actually, while the sun is moving into Taurus, it's going to square Pluto. So that's another kind of emotionally tense, not emotionally tense, but there's a lot of energy of needing to do something or needing to manifest or create something around the 20th and 21st. And with the sun squaring Pluto, on a mundane level, which is the transits and how they affect society and the country, there's been a lot going on with the banks and finances, obviously. And so when the sun ingresses into Taurus, the sign that is associated with money and finance and material goods and resources, and it's also squaring Pluto at 0 degrees Aquarius, there's definitely going to be some contention around the financial world for us to really take note of. During that time, squares are times when we have to make adjustments. So I think that's going to be a time where we realize that we have to start planning very really in a very real way for how to move forward with our money and how it's going to affect us. Also, Pluto in Aquarius, right, is the digitization of currency. So I think also around April 20th is when we're going to be hit with, oh, the reality of this is real, this is happening. I actually have to start making moves financially to secure my resources in this new age of money moving forward.
Yeah, I know that's a big one on everyone's plate. And I know a lot of people are sensing that, and they've been sensing it for a while. So that's a great date to kind of keep an eye on. I've had a theory that the banks, you're seeing these banks collapse or go bankrupt, and then another bank is coming, or a couple other banks are coming in and buying them up. And I was questioning, monopolies. And I thought, this is so interesting because this is just creating monopolies. Like, it's not, if you have Swiss bank being bought up by another bank conglomerate, and then they're kind of joining together, it's literally consolidating the money right before people's eyes. And it's almost like people are not paying attention. So keep that in mind. There's a monopoly system happening, as well as the Silicon Valley Bank being one of the banks that had a high amount of Bitcoin. There was something with the digital currency. And then if all these other banks are going in there and buying it up, or bailing them out or whatever, it's all becoming consolidated, right? So all of a sudden they will be the one with the most of the electronic currency. So
yep, exactly. So we're seeing the very beginnings of it happen, the transition of financial power over into the new era of currency, which Pluto and Capricorn, at the very last bits of it, we saw that with retail and capitalism. So during the 2020 pandemic, so many small businesses had to close, which is Capricorn, right? Businesses, organizations, and then they all got consolidated by the huge top 3 businesses in the country. So now we're onto the banking system. The same thing is happening there.
Yeah. And it's for those of us who love cash, there's something about being able to pay cash at a flea market or at a garage sale or wherever, that it just feels very natural. The idea of having to have your money on a digital system still doesn't sit 100% with me for sure, but I don't know how long we can hold the line on the whole cash system.
Oh, I know. I'm gonna miss it. I'm gonna miss cash, but because you have to make a very concerted effort to have it now. Like, it's like you have to either go to the bank and get it. Like, it's not in circulation as much.
That's true. And that's true. And I think it's different when you have a business. So that's when I have my own businesses, it's different because we get cash deposits every day. So I can utilize that, and it's not, so it's probably different than the normal person who has to go, not the normal person, but the normal idea where we have to go to the bank and pull out cash. Yes.
Yeah,
Sense.
absolutely. So that's also coming up for April too, towards the end of the month, especially with all of these squares to Pluto. On April 11th, Venus is trining Pluto, and also the sun is conjunct Jupiter. So that's a really abundant and beautiful day to take note of. April 11th is when Venus is starting to leave her square with Saturn.
Okay.
So when Venus and Saturn are in square connection, it can feel hard to open up emotionally to others, or it can feel like there's just sort of contention with relationships, or it's just a little rough around the edges. And so April 11th, she's leaving that square and moving into a trine with Pluto, which is really beautiful for being able to create growth and recognize what you've accomplished in terms of your relationship to yourself. Sun conjunct Jupiter, that's always a positive time where there's a lot of kind of congratulations, there's a lot of wins. I think that's a beautiful day to set aside to kind of just congratulate yourself. Just acknowledge how hard you've worked and acknowledge all that you've done throughout the winter season, because the winter season is not always easy, especially for people who have like seasonal depression or just have a harder time during the winter months. April 11th is a great time to just congratulate yourself and reward yourself for all of the work and transformation and death and Saturnian energies that we've been navigating.
So much Saturn, right? So it's I do feel that shift for sure when Saturn went into Pisces, and it's like releasing of that Saturnian energy. So with that lovely trine you're describing in sun conjunct Jupiter, it sounds like that they'll give you it's almost a nice reprieve from everything we've just experienced. Okay.
Yeah, definitely celebrating your relationships with your friends. And like you've mentioned, there's a lot of focus on relationships, I think, in general.
Yeah.
There's a lot of changes happening with relationships. That data is coming out about now. Younger kids or younger adults are not in relationships more than ever. And with Chiron and Aries, there's way more independent, like hyper focus on independence and non-coupling, and working on yourself and self, wellness, and the individual, there's just a huge focus on building up and developing the self.
Yes.
Yeah,
that's so true, especially with the idea that of the wellness, community. It's all about, how healed am I? I need to heal myself before I can be in partnership. You hear that a lot. So that's really interesting you mentioned that. We're actually holding a sacred relationship event here on May 7th, where it's bringing couples together in this love frequency and really starting to create stronger bonds in partnership. Because I think so many of us have gone off on that wellness journey for so long. It's like, how can we come together in a unified way?
Absolutely. So with the April 11th date, whenever Venus and Pluto are trine, or whenever there's a trine to Venus, like Saturn or Jupiter or Pluto, that's just a great time to reflect on how you are progressing in relationships with other people, or what you can do better, or especially Pluto, we've got the shadow that comes up. Congratulating yourself on working through maybe your own personal shadows around relationships, and just noticing the small steps that you've taken in order to become more heart opening and more in connection with other people.
I
So
love
yeah,
it.
that sounds like a
Okay.
really great event. That's wonderful.
Yes. So no, it's going to be a great event. It's, but it's just actually, popped up in my mind. I was like, that's reconfirming the whole relationship theme, that we're discussing here and what's kind of going on in April. And it sounds like we're on the right track of what
Yeah.
people are needing to do.
And then when the nodal axis changes into Libra Aries,
Yes.
that's also going to be a huge, again, resurgence of this, relationship, working on past relationships, overcoming past relationships that maybe still have a hold on your habitual patterns or maybe have even changed you in certain ways. Because as we all know, we when we couple with other people, we come out changed. We're not the same anymore. So when the nodes change into Libra Aries, it'll be a lot of that dialogue and communication around how we can move into greater awareness around our couplings and mindfulness around couplings and relationships.
I love that. Would you say, though, with the nodal change, the nodal shift, because I believe it's in my thought process, it's always you follow the north node, right? So it's always you go towards the north node when the south node keeps trying to pull you back. So I've had a little bit of issue with this coming up nodal shift because I am a Libra and I have 5 planets in Libra, and I know that I'm going to get hit pretty nicely with that south node energy. So would you say it's needing to focus more on self and more on communication? It's my 3rd house of communication, or cleaning out that past Libra partnership, whatever maybe is left over from partnerships in the past?
Yeah, well, yeah, both. And my north node is in Aries and my south node is in Libra. So I've been really focusing on what that means for me as a Libra as well. Like what am I supposed to be doing? And to me, what I've come to realize through my process of understanding north node in Aries is independence doesn't mean isolation. Independence means maintaining your sense of individuality while being coupled with another person.
Okay.
And so when North Node is in Aries, it's focusing on how you can be better or how you can own up to your own behaviors and your own emotions and like taking care of yourself so that you can be a stronger partner for another person and not dependent on another person to make you whole. So not dependent on other people's validation or emotional acknowledgement or other people just all the fun codependent things that Libras like to
Right. That we love to do.
It's like, not needing the other to be an independent self, which makes you a better partner because then you can see where you begin and the other person begins, and you can give the other person the respect of being an independent person and being themselves and not enmeshing your stuff with their stuff and like your emotions affecting them and them affecting your emotions and then like getting all cloudy. So, Aries North Node doesn't mean we're all going to break up. So there might be a lot of breakups because there might be a lot of realizations of your true inner self and whether or not that's conducive to the partner, or if the partnership is conducive to your true self or not. But the North Node in Aries, there's plenty of Aries who are in relationships. There's plenty of
course.
So it's not necessarily so much about like being hyper independent or hyper on your own. It's more so just acknowledging yourself and being honest with yourself, with who you are, and seeing yourself as an independent individual person who can also be in community with others without being shaken or without being changed or without being like your core going off balance, which is what Libras have to work on.
Huge. Yeah. No, it's huge. I think it's one of the biggest things that to start to realize as a Libra, that partnership doesn't define you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I've got to learn that. I had to learn that lesson. So it's one of those things that I remember being much younger, and just always needing to have another to do something with, right? Whether it was going to the movies or whatever it was. And then I started to do so much stuff on my own in my 30s that started to really make me understand who I was and what I actually liked.
And then I'm sure because of that, you were able to identify the right people for you.
Yes, and much better. Because I wasn't going off of what the other person wanted to do. I was going off of, what do I want to do? Where should I go explore? And then I would go. And it didn't matter if anybody wanted to go or they didn't want to go. I would just go. So this could so when we're talking this through, this actually could be a really positive. I mean, obviously all things are positive and negative, but there might be a silver lining to this nodal shift that I am now becoming aware of. So thank you.
You're welcome. I mean, I've definitely been thinking about it for a while myself. My Mars is on my South Node.
Oh my. It's on your South Node right now, or
my natal Mars is conjunct my South Node.
Oh. Do you have a Mars in Libra?
Yes. Yeah. Okay. So my Mars is at 0 degrees. And then my South Node is 2 degrees. So I've definitely done a significant amount of, work with, past lives.
And past partnerships.
Past partnerships, relationships. And then I always kind of get tripped up because I'm like, my North Node is in Aries, which Mars rules. But then it's like I came back to work on my past relationships to overcome them, to be more independent in the future.
That is
so it's kind of like a mind trip.
That is a mind trip because North Node opposing Mars as well, right? So that would be really that seems like it would be confusing as a Libra, just me myself being a Libra.
It is.
How to navigate. Do you have past men come back into your life often? I mean, that might be a really personal question, but that's how I would perceive it.
I would say yes, absolutely.
Right. I feel like they would keep coming back, and you would have to. It's almost like, how would you be able to finally like clear that relationship so it can stay where it needs to stay in the past?
Yes. Yeah, there's definitely that recurring theme of like the door's never closed.
Yeah. And Libras in general, I will say, for the most part, have a really hard time locking the door. Like we are such funny characters. We like to be like, no, we don't. No, we're not talking to you anymore. And then the person will continue to knock and we'll be like, okay, what do you need to say? What do you need to say? The door will like open again. It's just, I don't know if it's just because most of us are a little bit too nice or we want to be people pleasing, but it's definitely something I can imagine with that conjunction.
A little bit of that for sure.
Unless you're pulling that Aries North node in and just like, no, we're done. It's over. Not, this is the end. Not talking to you.
Past in the past. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's a really great observation. And it's definitely been the case. And like keeping ties open, just, I don't know. I think it's also the Scorpio in me that's like curious, like a constant curiosity of what else is there for me to learn about this, or what else is there like that isn't totally dead yet, just kind of like that scorpionic, like needing to keep poking until I'm for sure that it's dead.
Yes, there's got to be something more to uncover. I think that's the Scorpio, right? That there's got to be something else I can figure out or clean out in this situation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I definitely understand. I mean, it's all these things are huge changes in themselves. I mean, even Saturn, we didn't discuss that, but Saturn moving into Pisces this past month, here in March, and then all this other stuff kind of coming up, it really does feel like we are on the brink of the unknown. That's my best way to describe it. What would you say your overall kind of description for this time period would be?
With Saturn and Pisces?
With all of this stuff kind of coming up, I'm just saying there's so many changes happening. Is there a way, or is there a way that we can look at this, not just positively, because I don't want to sugarcoat anything, but how do we kind of approach this new journey with more curiosity than fear?
Well, I think that I guess as a Libra, it's going to be typical to say, but connecting with our relationships is what brings, I think, what makes it all worthwhile in the end, is how much we're able to connect with one another. And that's the whole point, I personally believe, is that we're here to learn how to love each other as much as possible. And we all have our own personal journeys with that, and our own personal struggles with learning how to love and not closing our hearts down, because it can be really easy to do that, especially when we feel constantly shamed and like beaten down by society or the systems or like the government or jobs or and the internet, even just on like a Twitter feed, like getting beaten down by just a dumb comment or something. Like keeping the ability to or learning how to keep your heart open, and your ability to keep that the option for connection, I think is the key lesson for everything, all of life, the whole point of life. Really,
for sure, right? It's how can you connect to others in a meaningful way, and us as Libras, there's been such a challenge over the course of this past Pluto transit, for at least specifically for me, but I know some of my other Libra friends, where our hearts, as much as we're all about love, it sometimes has been really hard to connect fully in relationship because we feel like we have to protect ourselves all the time. So it's
Yeah.
almost bursting open that heart space and really being authentic and truthful in our expression of love.
Absolutely, which I think that Aries is like carries or embodies that bravery
Oh
to
yeah,
do so, and that courage to
absolutely.
openly and passionately just throw themselves into the cauldron, without kind of thinking too hard about the repercussions of
Right?
it.
It's that
Um,
warrior energy.
for the passion of knowing that, or not just the passion of like being able to test yourself in opening up to another. So yeah, again, with the North Node movement into Aries, it's again, I really hope that we don't see a lot of language around it being like hyper independence and like disconnecting from others, and because that's not at all what Aries is about, and nor would we ever see an Aries just being like, just always on their own. Like they eventually throughout their lives learn that it's important to connect with others, because what's the point of it all then? Like what's the
Right.
point of any of this if there's no one else to share it with?
Absolutely. Would you say, and this is maybe on a last note with that North Node shifting into Aries, um, with all this war energy that's already been going on, will we see an increase in that?
Yeah, we will. That's something that is in the collective. It's already in our conscious minds, it's in our subconscious, it's at the forefront of what people are talking about, people are preparing for. Pluto and Aquarius could also be the breakdown of cultures, the breakdown of society, and to a certain extent, which then we'll have to rebuild. And yeah, I have thought about that too, and kind of worried a little bit about the war element of North Node and Aries. And we'll see with this eclipse, the solar eclipse on April 19th. So what happens there is going to be a big telltale of what to watch out for the rest of the year in terms of war and strife and combativeness and fighting and martial, which is martial law,
Right.
military movement. So yeah, I would say that, I don't know, I've never been through war, I've never experienced that. My family has though, and I've been affected. We've all been affected by it in some way, shape, or form, and we're trying to heal from it. And I think that in this country, we've been so lucky to not have to think about it, really think about it or be affected by it physically in any which way. And
Not in modern times, for sure.
not in modern times, yeah, since the Revolutionary War and Civil War. So I think that, I do think there's going to be more of that to come, unfortunately. But personally, I've chosen to trust in my ability to survive and also have confidence in my ability to take care of myself. And if I work off of that energy in trusting myself,
Yeah.
then I know I'll be able to get through whatever I need to get through. That's also North Node Aries too, is trusting your abilities to fight through whatever you need and have the strength to pull through difficulties and difficult times. So that's where I'm coming from at this point. I'm like, you know what? I know how to plant a seed.
Yeah.
I know how to find water. I know how to put some twigs together first. Like I'll be fine. I'll figure it out. If worse comes worse.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And just like trusting your space and trusting the people around you is such a big part of it too.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I've been working out. So
Perfect. On a lighter note, yes, we will survive.
we will survive. And I think take that confidence in, into the future with yourselves. That's the biggest thing. Because without the confidence, that's where I think it really gets dicey.
I agree. I really agree. And yes, it's one of those things where us as Americans, we only have concepts of war from the past or from other societies, that are so far away. It always feels so far away. Ukraine feels far away. Russia feels far away. Iraq felt far away. That we'll kind of see what is to come. And I'm excited to talk to you again next month and see what these dates have kind of shed light on our future, as well as, we'll see where we are.
Well, you will see. Moving through the future with confidence and one step at a time.
Exactly. Thank you so much for breaking this all down for me and for all of our listeners, and just, really helping to decipher what's going on, what's really going on in this world, and using astrology as kind of a roadmap, if you will, to how we can navigate through the world in a more effective and meaningful way. So thank you.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for having me. Really appreciate having this space and opportunity to share.
We love it. I mean, it's one of my favorite topics, so it's so good.
Well, thank you so much. And it was a pleasure.